I'm confessing. I'm guilty of having ordered a PE set. It's made by Part, a Polish company I didn't know before, and it's a huge set that'll do for 2 AFVs. Initially I only bought it because of the grates for the engine compartment. The kit's PE parts aren't anywhere close to the actual grates because they're just flat. I'll display the one on the driver's side open, and it can't be done with the kit parts. Well, I could scratch build some of the missing parts for them, but I don't want to do that. Since I leave all side doors off, you'll be able to see about everything inside the cab. That's very nice, but the kit lacks many details wouldn't see. I could try and scratch build many of them, but then I'd never be able to finish the kit in a reasonable stretch of time. I won't use the complete set because I want to keep some of the parts for the second HST I'll buy later this year. As you see, the set has some of the parts I just built for the .50 cal machine gun. We'll talk about it again. I told you that Dan found the most beautiful M2 Brownings we ever saw. They come from the Russian company Live Resin. They're made of, you'll never guess, resin. Getting them is extremely difficult. Dan found an online shop in the USA that carries them, but I wasn't able to find a shop in Europe up to now. Dan ordered the set and he showed me a couple of pics. Stunning doesn't express halfway what I think about it. I found a shop in Taiwan and eBay Netherlands, and I ordered the set of 3 for €14, shipping included. I haven't decided yet if I'll use one of them for the HST, but if I do, I already have use for the .50 I just built. So no need to worry. Nothing will be wasted. Okay, now for the running gear. The Bogey assemblies come in 5 parts each, including the road wheels. There's no difference between the parts for the left and the right hand side. 2 of the springs must be attached with a spring facing to the left and 2 with a spring facing to the right hand side. There's flash on all parts, sometimes more, sometimes less. Usually flash is the result of 2 mold halves that don't close properly. Here the flash also comes from misaligned molds. All parts are at least slightly off, and that makes for very difficult and time-consuming cleaning procedures. You'll see more of it, but I can tell you that whether Dan's kit nor the first HST I bought had these issues. I often build kits that are 40 years old, but I never saw anything like this before. If I didn't know that Hobby Boss can do much better, this would have been my first and last kit of theirs. Let's take a look at the assembly now. If you thought I just wanted to show you how to glue these 5 parts together, you were mistaken. In my early years as an armor modeler, I built more US vehicles than anything else, and many of them were Shermans. At one point I was fed up with painting the road wheels on the completed bogies. I didn't have an airbrush, so I always missed some spots. Painting the rubber tires was also more difficult than necessary. My solution is this. I drill out the road wheels for the use of new axles. In 2007 I bought 1 meter pieces of carbon fiber rod, and that's what I used since then. Before that I used the thickest copper wire I could get. My dad is an electrician and he gave it to me. The original axles are removed and the rear bogie half is drilled out completely. The front half is drilled out only half the way. Here we have the springs, and cleaning them up was a real pain in the arse. Apart from flash and pronounced seam lines, some of them even had sink marks on both ends. Since they'll be visible, the marks had to go. As I said, very time consuming. Here we have the finished bogies. They can be glued to the lower hull now. Then I noticed that all road wheel hubs were off center on one side. I'd say the rear side, but there is no rear on these wheels. I decided to drill out the hubs and make new ones from styrene tubing. The new hubs had to be drilled out for the new axles. This way I was also able to use axle of a smaller diameter. This helped me dealing with the smaller holes I drilled into the bogie halves. The new axles were made from copper wire instead of carbon fiber rods. I needed these pics to notice that I didn't do a good job on the rounded surfaces of the springs, not to forget the top spots of the bogies, but I took care of that. The axles will be cut to length after the final assembly. Now I can paint and weather wheels and bogies separately, while the bogies are already glued to the lower hull. I'll install the road wheels before the last stage of weathering. Usually this isn't half as much work. My mistake in the misalignments made it that much work. Drilling out wheels and bogie halves can be done in 15 minutes, so in my opinion it's worth it to do this for an easier paint job. You will have seen resin sets of damaged German road wheels. The rubber part of the road wheels is prone to getting damaged because of rocks that are trapped on the track's inside. The end connectors or guide-ons can make it very difficult to get rid of those rocks without somebody picking them out by hand. The resin sets are a nice but also expensive idea. Damaging the wheels only takes a couple of minutes. The most important thing here is not to go over the top with it. Carving or filing too deep won't look realistic. You can damage all the wheels of one vehicle. This could be the case for a tank that saw a lot of action without the opportunity of getting repaired. You could also damage just a couple of wheels. This would show a vehicle that's been repaired, but not all road wheels have been replaced. Maybe the field workshop didn't have enough road wheels, or the now damaged road wheels appear to be in good shape then. Stewart and HST share one feature, and that's the closed idler wheel assembly. We have the idler wheel plus two rims, the two swing arm halves, and the shock absorber. Again, you can see a lot of flash. It would have been easy to paint the complete idler assembly after gluing it to the lower hull because there's access to all surfaces. I just didn't think of it, so I changed it too. First thing was to drill out the two axle halves. The axle halves. Like with the bogies, I drilled out the rear half completely. For the front half I marked the drill bit because I didn't want to drill too deep. I'm sorry, I had deleted the original pic, so I had to correct my mistake this way. Here you can see it. The front half's outside still looks like before. Then I removed the axle halves and glued them into the idler wheel hubs. Here's what it looks like now. Try fitting with a drill bit. The idler wheels needed some serious filling. I used CA glue gel for the job. And then there were the gaps on top of the swing arms. I find CA glue easier to work with on small spots. Here you can see the idler wheel assembly as it'll look like on the finished vehicle. There was flash on all return rollers. These were the worst ones. The arms didn't look any better. In fact, they were worse because the styrene is thinner. Anyway, after cleaning up the parts, you get these nice return roller assemblies. The drive sprockets weren't as bad as the rest of the running gear. All you need to do is cutting them off a bit off of the actual part in order to retain some styrene to work with while cleaning them up. The locators fit precisely. Here's a pic of the lower hull I took for the review. It shows nasty ejector pin marks all over. This is one of the points Dan mentioned in his rant, and he was right about it. Guess what? All these marks needed to be filled. I wanted to try a different way of doing this. I punched out matching circles from 0.2mm styrene sheet and glued them into each mark. I won't do this again for shallow marks like these because sending them flush took ages, but I will do it on deeper marks. Here's some dry fitting with the idler wheel swing arms. It revealed that it may be difficult to insert the new axles when the arms are glued into place. The opening is partially covered by the lower hull. Well, as I said, it wouldn't have been necessary to change it in the first place. These covers go on the lower hull right in front of the idler wheels. Flat parts like those didn't cause any trouble because the misalignments didn't affect them. These are the fittings for the bogies. They must be glued into place before the return rollers because the latter would interfere if you attach them first. At least that's what the instructions say. The final drive housings consist of 3 parts. The actual housing, the plate with the grease nipple, and the shackle. These shackles won't be used. I don't know what they look like with properly aligned modes, but cleaning them up is too much work. There's another reason that makes using them more or less impossible, but I'll talk about it in my next update. The final drive housings look nice and fit well, and that's the only important thing about them. Here we have the running gear as it'll look like on the finished HST. The road wheel bogies are glued into place while idle wheel swing arms and drive sprockets are just dry fitted. The drive sprockets have no locators, so they sit loosely on the axles. On the one hand that makes putting on the tracks easier, but on the other hand the sprockets can come off easily. I don't really like that and I'll think of a way to change it. This was a perfect moment to do some important work. I cut 2 axles of 1mm copper wire for the idler wheels. They were used to mount the wheels temporarily. I used strips of masking tape to secure them. Then I attached them to the lower hull with a tiny bit of PVA glue. The swing arms will be removed again, but now I needed them to finish the track assembly. I also fitted road wheels and drive sprockets for the task. I only need to determine the final amount of track links and then I'll finish both tracks.
That's all, folks.